couple of you guys have asked, hey James, can you fit an entire spatchcock chicken on the little guy, the Joe Jr.? Well, to find out, we're gonna get ready to fire up our Kamado Joe Jr., prep our bird, and find out if it fits and see how it cooks. Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue, and we are ready to grill some spatchcock chicken. Well, after some snow removal, we're ready to grill some spatchcock chicken. So I'll move the camera a little bit closer, show you how we're gonna set up. We're also trying some new charcoal for the first time. Jealous Devil sent me some of their chunks charcoal, and I'm used to using their larger XL variety. And I think this might be a good fit, pun intended, in a smaller grill like the Joe Jr., where we're not getting pieces that are the size of the charcoal basket itself. So let's dust off the cover, get our stuff, start our fire, and I'll walk you through all the steps in terms of everything we're gonna do to prep for the cook, as well as seasoning up our spatchcock chicken. All right, let's add some charcoal. So much for smaller. Set that aside. Honestly, this stuff looks almost the same size as the regular variety, but I'll just remove some of the extra that we don't need. So I guess the good thing is this bag is actually cheaper than the regular size, and it looks pretty similar. Let's go ahead and fire it up. Okay, let's let that come up to temp. Okay, so we'll let our grill come up to temperature. You might have noticed there that I didn't ignite all the coals. We could have definitely gone a lot further with our torch, but the grill is cold. It's been covered in snow, and I like to let the ceramics come up naturally. So we're doing a couple things here. One, we're gonna let everything just come up to temperature at a little bit more gradual pace. The other thing that we want to do is just let the heat soak the dome completely, so we get the full advantage of the ultraviolet infrared cooking capabilities from our ceramic dome. And so we're gonna cook today's bird at around 400 degrees Fahrenheit. If I'm cooking on the classic or the Big Joe, I like to go a little bit higher, but on the Junior, we're sitting a little bit closer to our heat deflector. So 400 ends up being a really good temperature for the bottom of the bird, as well as enough temperature to crisp up that skin because we're sitting closer to the top of the dome. So that's the game plan. But anywhere's, 400 to 450 is fine with me. I start getting nervous making adjustments if we go above that, or if we're not warm enough and we're sitting in the 300s, which is also not going to render out the fat and the skin as nicely in our spatchcock chicken. Speaking of the spatchcock chicken, for seasonings, we're keeping it simple today. We've just gone with some salt, pepper, garlic, and a little bit of thyme. If it was more exciting than just sprinkling that on, I'd put it on camera, but that's all we've done inside in the heat where it was much, much warmer. So I'll go ahead now and get our deflector plate out, which is also snow covered, brush that off and just let that warm up so that we're not throwing it in snow covered as ice cold into a hot grill. And we'll let that all come up to temperature together. This is a little bit different than how I normally like to do it, where I want to see 400 degrees on the dome and then drop in that ceramics. But when it's negative 10, negative 15 out like it is today, that is too much of a shock on those ceramics that have been sitting outside and got covered in snow, which snuck in on me overnight here. So that's the game plan, and then we'll let everything warm up together. I'll rejoin you in a couple minutes when our grill is up to temperature. All right, our Kamado Joe Jr. says it's up to temperature, actually a little bit too much even, saying 500 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not 500 degrees Fahrenheit. If I can hold my hand here this long, as pleasant as that is when I'm freezing cold, it's not really 500. So we're just still getting some of that hot charcoal, maybe even some flames coming up around our heat deflector and hitting our thermometer, which is telling us that it's 500 degrees. And I want to belabor this point just a little bit because it is so important that we do another check, maybe even the hand test. And if you can hold your hand here for more than a couple seconds, or even at all, 400 degrees should be hot, uncomfortably hot, maybe even burn you hot. Not something that you could just leave your hand there. So what we're gonna do now though, is go ahead and adjust our vent. So I'm gonna take my bottom vent down to about a finger's width, and we're using the smokeware cap today, which I've been having on for this season because it's adding some rain protection where I don't have any overhead coverage for our Joe Jr. And I'm gonna go about the halfway point. Many of you, I suspect, are using the daisy wheel, and so what you're going to want to do here is go the same on the bottom, about 1 finger width, and then on the daisy wheel, close the top but have the pedals as open as you can, so max airflow, and let that stabilize. That should land you somewhere around 400 degrees, and you can make some micro adjustments if you need a little bit more air or a little bit less, depending again on your climate. So we'll just let that stabilize now, and once this soaks up some of that heat and I can no longer hold my hand there, and I'm seeing 400 degrees Fahrenheit on the dome, we'll know we're ready to cook. And I teased that early at the intro, but one of the advantages of your Kamado Joe cooker is that you have 3 heat sources that can really help cook your food. First is the meat on a surface, right? We have our convection cooking, and we're not really doing that today. The meat will be sitting on the stainless steel grid, but that's not the same as something like a cast iron surface or soapstone, where you're really getting that high energy transfer from a hot surface to your food. The second and third we are using, which is convection cooking. So convection is the hot air racing up, hitting our heat diffuser, moving out, billowing around the dome, and exiting out our top vent. And so that is the one method that we're cooking. But what really sets the Kamado Joe apart from others is the infrared radiant heat. And for that to work, this is where you need your dome heat soaked. And this is true regardless of temperature, whether you're cooking at 225 degrees Fahrenheit or you're doing something a little hotter like we're doing today at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, is that is what's going to help cook your meat evenly deep down inside, and also not have it dry out. If we were to cook with just hot air, for example, even though the Kamado does a good job of holding in moisture, hot air is drying out your food. That's why chicken tastes so different and amazing on a Kamado Joe versus, say, your propane grill. The first time I had it, it blew my mind. I cooked frozen chicken breast. I'm embarrassed to admit, but that's actually the first thing I ever cooked on a ceramic barbecue, and it was night and day difference. And the magic is really this extra source of heat that you get. And so don't rush that if you're tempted. It's worth the wait. Anyways, I need a few more minutes for this to stabilize at 400 degrees. I'll go grab the chicken and meet you in a few minutes when we're ready to throw it on. All right, we're finally ready. Our grill is up to temperature. Let me move the camera a little closer. We'll find out if the spatchcocked chicken fits flawlessly or not on the Kamado Joe Jr. I've done this before, I know it fits, but still interesting. Let's do it. All right, our grill is now reading 400 degrees, and yeah, I don't want to be there any longer than a nanosecond. So let's go ahead, get this open, and throw on our chicken. So you can see the seasoning, I ended up adding just a little bit of rosemary for a little bit of extra herbal kick, but everything else is the same. So salt, pepper, garlic, thyme, and rosemary. Drag on our chicken. Okay, that looks great. Plenty of space. There we are, spatchcocked chicken on the Joe Jr. Let's see how it cooks. Gonna aim for about 45 minutes, but we'll check it at half an hour and see if we're somewhere in the 45-minute range or getting closer to an hour. Let's put this to bed. All right, it's been about 40 minutes is our total cook time at 400 degrees, and our bird is probing perfect on the thighs as well as in the breast meat. Let me bring the camera a little bit closer so you can see for yourself. Try to light it up as best you can, but that skin has got a nice crispy texture to it. I can't wait to dig in and try it. So let me get this off inside so it doesn't cool off too quick in our nice winter ambient temperatures out here, and rejoin you in a minute for a taste test. All right, we are ready for our taste test. Oh, it's windy. Speaking of that, light almost blows over. All right, we are ready for our taste test, and this is going to cool off quick. So without any further ado, let's get into it. You know, that is so good. I think the first time you cook something, if you're new to Kamado Joe or a ceramic grill, you got a big green egg or anything else, try chicken on it. Because it's just one of those things where it's almost a completely different meat you've never had in your life. I love a lot of other things cooking on the Joe, but chicken is just one of those things where you almost can't believe it's the same thing that you've had your whole life, because it just tastes completely different. Charcoal was the perfect amount of smoke, no smoking wood. We didn't want to get that skin rubbery. Our seasoning is awesome. That rosemary, thyme, some garlic, salt and pepper is really just giving a great balance. And at that temperature, helping render out that fat so we get a crisp skin, that's just delight all the way around. I hope you really enjoyed today's video and proving that the Joe Jr. is more than capable to handle a spatchcock chicken. Thanks so much for asking that question. When it tastes this good, I love doing these little experiments to answer what you guys want to know. And so if you liked it, please let YouTube know by smashing that like button. Let me know by hitting subscribe to catch future videos. And remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.